Imagine walking into a buzzing boxing gym where sweat and anticipation fill the air. In one corner, a young fighter sharpens his reflexes, every jab fueled by untapped potential. In another, a quiet but commanding trainer observes from behind folded arms, giving no hint of emotion. The energy crackles with the promise of something great, a champion in the making. That was the scene not too long ago, when a kid named Gervonta Davis found a home under Calvin Ford's watchful eye. This bond was more than trainer and trainee. It was like father and son, complete with late-night phone calls, heartfelt pep talks, and the kind of tough love that shapes someone for life. Years later, their story has veered onto a rocky path, leaving fans wondering how an unbreakable bond could ever fracture. But that was only the beginning. Long before the world recognized Davis for his ferocious knockout power, he was just a Baltimore kid who craved direction. Calvin Ford offered more than a set of boxing gloves. He provided a sense of stability and respect. Davis often showed up at the gym hours before it opened, curling up on the concrete outside and waiting. No matter the weather, he preferred the promise of those four ropes to the uncertainties of life on the streets. Ford didn't just teach jabs and uppercuts, he taught discipline, showing Davis that the ring could be a sanctuary from chaos. Early on, Ford saw something special in the young fighter. He saw blazing speed, raw power, and a level of hunger that couldn't be faked. The emotional bond between them ran so deep that Davis began calling Ford his father, a symbolic nod to the guidance and sense of belonging he found in the gym. But beneath that warmth, the seed of ambition grew, and that spark would soon set off a chain of controversies. At first, they took the boxing world by storm. With every victory, Davis's star rose and Ford's pride grew. Promoters started circling, big money offers poured in, and boxing insiders whispered about a future superstar. Davis was recognized as a knockout machine, seemingly unstoppable every time he stepped into the ring. Ford's method of training, fusing old-school grit with an understanding of modern showmanship, helped Davis become not just a winner but an attraction. People tuned in because they sensed genuine passion. The father and son energy was evident in their corner routines. It felt like something real in a sport that often thrives on empty flash. Before long, fans were calling Davis the heir to Floyd Mayweather's throne, believing the future of the lightweight division was in his hands. No one imagined that behind the scenes, tension was quietly forming, threatening to unravel everything. Then came the swirl of rumors, first faint, then louder. Was Davis taking the next big step in his career? Was he leaving Mayweather Promotions, and if so, what role did that leave for Ford? Whispers hinted at disagreements with management and simmering resentments over how business was being handled. Leonard Ellerbe, once an essential figure in Davis's promotional journey, found himself at the center of swirling questions too. People who watched their camaraderie wondered how things had reached this point. Outside observers fueled the speculation, claiming that Davis was underappreciated and that Ford should have garnered more recognition for shaping him into such a star. Others brushed it off as standard boxing drama, the sort of talk that arises whenever a fighter hits new levels of success. But everything changed when Davis and Ellerbe publicly acknowledged a parting of ways with their longtime associates, an announcement that left fans questioning how it would affect the bond between Davis and Ford. The immediate impact went beyond mere rumors. Reporters noted that in Davis's most recent fights, Ford was no longer the unmistakable presence in his corner. During tense in-ring moments, Davis's gaze seemed to search for Ford, as though missing a familiar voice that had guided him through countless sparring sessions. Even fans who usually focus on the punches couldn't help but notice a subtle difference. Davis talked more than usual, engaging in back-and-forth jabs with opponents and referees alike. Some said he appeared less composed. Others swore it was just Davis's evolving style, a sign of independence. Yet longtime watchers felt something was off, like a crucial puzzle piece was missing. For some critics, the proof was in the performance. They believed he didn't look as sharp, as though that intangible spark was dimmed by the absence of his long-trusted mentor. But that wasn't the whole story. Leonard Ellerbe then addressed swirling controversies about whether Davis had fired Ford or if Ford had chosen to step away. Ellerbe insisted the idea of a permanent split with Ford was ludicrous, that Davis owed much of his success to the coach's expertise. He even lashed out at those suggesting otherwise, calling it disrespectful to a man who had shaped Davis since the fighter was a teen. Ellerbe also voiced his frustration at how Ford was rarely recognized with official accolades like Trainer of the Year honors. In his view, the oversight was not only puzzling but unfair, given Ford's track record in molding raw talents into top contenders. This call for recognition highlighted a theme that had been bubbling under the surface for years. As Davis's profile soared, many felt Ford's influence was being downplayed, intentionally or otherwise. Yet inside the boxing community, people knew the truth, that Davis's unstoppable rise owed just as much to the man in his corner as it did to his own fists. Around this time, Ford opened up about his own feelings on the matter, revealing the emotional burdens that come with working so closely with a fighter. He recalled times when Davis was just a scrawny kid, trembling with excitement at the gym's door. Ford talked about how they trained through adversity, with Davis fighting personal battles that extended beyond any ring. Through heartbreaks, injuries, and fleeting doubts, Ford remained a constant force, guiding Davis with a sure hand. Yet as Davis's reputation ballooned, external pressures grew. New people entered the picture, each offering a different vision for how to manage a once-in-a-generation talent. In Ford's words, he had no choice but to accept that eventually, every great fighter steps out of the mentor's shadow. He'd seen it happen with others who soared high, and now, he was seeing it in Davis. Even so, Ford admitted that the emotional toll was real, describing it as both heart-wrenching and inevitable. Many fans who once saw Davis and Ford as inseparable now felt torn. They'd admired Davis's ambition and believed that exploring fresh strategies could be beneficial for a champion. At the same time, the image of Ford's careful instruction and paternal warmth lingered in people's minds. The tension reminded them of other legendary breakups in boxing, from iconic fighters who drifted away from the trainers that first discovered them. Sometimes success can breed distance, as new advisors promise bigger paychecks and more global opportunities. But not everyone is convinced that this is merely a matter of business. Speculation runs rampant that personal misunderstandings played a big role, ignited by Davis's repeated references to forging his own path. Whenever pressed, Davis neither wholeheartedly denies the rift nor fully confirms it, leaving an air of mystery around what truly happened behind gym doors. In one striking moment during a training session that was captured on camera, Ford approached Davis to offer advice, only to be met with a curt interruption. "You gotta stop and listen to me," Davis said. That brief exchange, though small, felt monumental to those who understood their long history. It was a signal that Davis was no longer the wide-eyed kid in the corner, soaking up every word. He was evolving into his own kind of leader, setting boundaries and possibly pushing away the paternal figure who'd gotten him to where he was. Ford took it in stride, but the look on his face spoke volumes. He recognized the moment for what it was. The first visible crack in a fortress they'd spent years building. Those who defend Davis argue that no matter how strong a bond is, a fighter has to prioritize personal growth. From their perspective, Davis's unstoppable momentum calls for new challenges, maybe a new voice that can expand his repertoire. They insist that boxing greatness hinges on constant evolution, even if that means stepping away from the man who taught you your very first jab. Still, critics counter that you can't replace history overnight. They claim Davis risks losing the intangible chemistry that only forms through years of trust and mutual understanding. To them, Calvin Ford is more than a trainer, he's the moral compass and emotional anchor that helps Davis remain grounded, especially under the pressure of being a worldwide star. But there was more complexity yet to be revealed. Amid all the tension, Ford insisted that no one person can fully claim responsibility for Davis's success. He argued that Davis was blessed from the start, a fighter gifted with raw power and an uncanny ability to read opponents. Ford could provide technique and discipline, but he couldn't manufacture that kind of talent. He also acknowledged that Davis was now fully capable of deciding his own path, even if that meant seeking new advisors or forging a fresh style in the ring. Ford's sense of resignation seemed to come not from bitterness, but acceptance of the cyclical nature of boxing. There's a time for a trainer's watchful presence, and then a time for the fighter to spread his wings. Yet for all his understanding, Ford made it clear that the emotional toll of letting go was immense. In interviews, Davis's own words revealed a deep internal conflict. He spoke about how, in his early days, it was less about the sport and more about the love and guidance Ford provided. The gym felt like a second home, a place where Davis finally got the fatherly support he lacked. Now as a world champion, Davis recognizes the complexity of mixing personal loyalty with professional ambition. He never outright tarnishes Ford's legacy. Instead, he praises Ford's dedication and claims the coach will always have a place in his life. The fans can't help noticing subtle changes in how Davis carries himself. He's become the captain of his own ship, less reliant on anyone else's steering. With new influences crowding around him, the question is whether he can maintain that same sense of identity without the coach who once shaped his every step. For longtime observers, the real heartbreak lies in seeing how easily the closeness of a boxing family can unravel when business and ego collide. Yes, the mutual respect still flickers, but it's overshadowed by a swirl of interviews and cryptic social media posts. Some recall another time when Davis split from his mentor figure, Floyd Mayweather. That parting was complicated, overshadowed by talk of money, control, and bigger fights. Now it feels like history may be repeating itself in a new form. The irony is that Davis once sought to break free from Mayweather's shadow, only to land in a situation where he might be inadvertently casting his own longtime trainer aside. Ford, to his credit, says he supports Davis's drive for greatness and will always have his back if Davis ever needs him. Whether that reassurance is enough remains to be seen. The separation's ripple effect goes beyond Davis's personal circle. In the broader boxing world, trainers, promoters, and fighters are all paying attention. Rumors swirl about who will step in to fill Ford's shoes, if anyone can. Analysts argue that Davis, while gifted, may struggle to replicate Ford's ability to read his mindset during fights. Others believe a fresh perspective could elevate Davis's skill set, especially if he wants to unify different weight classes or take on the biggest names in the sport. Meanwhile, fans are left guessing which version of Davis they'll see in the future. The one who fights with a cool head and a father figure in his corner, or an independent force determined to chart his own path regardless of the cost. And what about Ford's future as a trainer? Some say he might mentor a new crop of promising contenders, imparting the same wisdom he once shared with Davis. No matter how you look at it, the bond that shaped so many of Davis's iconic victories is not the same. Maybe it's a temporary rift that heals with time, or maybe it's a permanent fork in the road. The one thing is certain, the boxing world is witnessing a watershed moment for both men. Davis stands on the cusp of an even brighter spotlight, carrying the hopes and expectations of fans who believe he can become a generational great. Ford, for his part, grapples with the mixed emotions of releasing a fighter into the wild after nurturing him for so many years. It's the classic mentor-protege drama: love, respect, ambition, and heartbreak all blended into one saga that refuses to settle neatly. Perhaps this is all part of the natural evolution of any champion. Everyone eventually confronts the decision to stay loyal or to branch out. In Davis's case, the stakes couldn't be higher, because he's not just another boxer, he's an icon in the making, a pay-per-view draw who captures headlines the moment he laces up his gloves. Ford's fingerprints are all over that success, and no matter how many belts Davis wins, the memories of sleeping outside the gym doors will remain part of his story. Whether they find themselves back in the same corner someday or remain on different paths, their intertwined journey has already become a modern boxing legend. As you think about the future, consider how much one guiding voice can matter for a rising athlete. Is success entirely self-made, or do mentors deserve a bigger share of the credit for pushing raw talent to new heights? And what happens when that guiding voice steps aside? For Davis, the next chapter could be about proving he can stand alone, forging partnerships on his own terms, and showing that greatness comes from within. For Ford, it might be a chance to shape yet another fighter, channeling that unbreakable commitment to community and discipline into a new success story. The possibilities remain endless, but the emotional stakes are sky-high. And so the story continues. Two men who once functioned as a unit, teacher and student, father and son, have reached a crossroads. Davis moves toward bigger fights, new alliances, and an expanding legacy. Ford steps back, reflecting on a mission that demanded most of his adult life, watching from the sidelines as his former pupil conquers the sport. Will there be a grand reunion down the line, or is this the final break? No one can say for sure, but the ripple effect of their decisions will echo through the boxing world for years to come. Their saga stands as a reminder that even in an individual sport, relationships can define a champion, and sometimes letting go is just as impactful as holding on. Until the next time both men cross paths, whether under the lights of a sold-out arena or in the quiet camaraderie of an empty gym, the boxing world will watch with bated breath. Their story is far from over, but for now it leaves everyone pondering a vital question: how much of a champion's identity belongs to his own fists, and how much is shaped by the people who stand in his corner from the very beginning? Only time will reveal the full answer, and the uncertainty may be the most gripping part of all.